Welcome, everybody. And I'm delighted to turn things over to our presenter, Chelsea. Chelsea works to incorporate evidence-based music practices into all sorts of different healthcare settings. She educates college and university students, family, and formal caregivers on the use of music to support health and wellness goals. And so I'm very excited today to turn things over to Chelsea. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Lori, for that warm introduction. And thank you, everyone, for joining us here today. It is such a gift to spend an hour with you. I am joining you from Ontario, so it is also warm over here. And it's great to see friendly faces and names and see comments in the chat of folks from all over the country. So I'm going to share my screen and we'll get right into the presentation. I'll welcome everyone to our chat today about music in the brain, and we'll be specifically talking about key considerations for dementia. As we begin, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the Indigenous peoples of the land that we're all participating from today. From coast to coast to coast, we acknowledge the ancestral and unsurrendered territory of all Inuit, Métis, and First Nations people that call this land home. I am joining you from Ontario, Hamilton, Ontario, and I am currently on the traditional territories of the Mississauga and Haudenosaunee nations within the lands protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. The people living on this land for thousands and thousands of years represent many and varied cultures, systems of governments, and language, as well as unique musical traditions, musical spiritual practices, and musical healthcare practices. We see these musical traditions today being practiced in their historical contexts, as well as in the modern contexts of entertainment, expression, activism, and identity. And I encourage all of you to explore and amplify some of the music that's being created by Indigenous voices today and learn how to connect with that music and how it supports the spirit and in which we offer this land acknowledgement. So what's on the docket today? My goal today is to leave you with some new information on how music impacts the brain and how this relates to dementia care. All the information that I'm sharing is applicable to you if you are a caregiver for yourself, looking for tools and resources that you can implement in your own life, or if you're looking for musical tools and resources that you can use in your role caring for another, maybe a family member or a community member. So we'll start with a musical offering, and then we'll talk about music and social connection, music and communication. Then we'll talk specifically about the different parts of the brain that are musical, and then how we can use music in the context of dementia care. And we'll finish up by talking about how music can be used by all of us, independent of our age and life stage, to support healthy brain aging across our life course. In terms of housekeeping, as Lori said, you can use the chat function to ask questions along the way. Or if you're experiencing any technical difficulties, I'll leave it in Lori's capable hands to respond to those types of questions. As we go, depending on time and flow, I might address questions along the way, or I may hold them until the end. We'll just see how it goes, but I look forward to responding to your questions. So don't hesitate to write them at any point along the way. And if we don't get to it during the presentation, we'll get to it at the end. Okay, so we're going to start in music. I'll invite everyone to take a deep breath. Relax those shoulders, maybe roll them back. Notice how your body feels, how your breathing feels. And I'm going to, oh dear, I'm going to sing a song for you today. And if you'd like, you can simply listen. And if you would like, you can respond in the chat to this prompt that's on the screen. It says, how does the music make you feel? And what memory or memories does the music evoke for you?
Think I'll go out to Alberta. Weather's good there in the fall. I got some friends that I could go to working for. Still, I wish you'd change your mind if I asked you one more time. But we've been through this 100 times or more. Four strong winds that blow lonely, seven seas that run high, all those things that don't change, come what may. If the good times are all gone, then I'm bound for moving on. I'll look for you if I'm ever back this way. If I get there before the snow flies, and if things are looking good, you could meet me if I sent you down the fair. But by then it would be winter, not much more for you to do, and those winds sure can blow cold away out there. Four strong winds that blow lonely, seven seas that run high, all those things that don't change, come what may. If the good times are all gone, then I'm bound for moving on. I'll look for you if I'm ever back this way. Still, I wish you'd change your mind if I asked you one more time. But we've been through this 100 times or more. Four strong winds that blow lonely, seven seas that run high, all those things that don't change, come what may. If the good times are all gone, then I'm bound for moving on. I'll look for you if I'm ever back this way. I'll look for you if I'm ever back this way.
Lots of wonderful memories in the chat, Chelsea.
Amazing. Yeah, I'm just taking
Yeah.
a look at them. We've got Glenda brings back happy memories of camping with friends as a teen and visiting my grandparents. Warm feelings inside from Janine. Relaxed summer winds close to home, Sandy. Thanks everyone for participating in this. I recognize that that song is probably familiar to some folks and not familiar to others. And that's okay too, because familiar music and unfamiliar music can do lots of things for our bodies, our minds, and our souls. And we'll get into that today. That song is called Four Strong Winds, and it's by Ian Tyson of Ian and Sylvia, a great Canadian anthem, if you will. So I noticed that in our chat, we've got lots of feelings that were evoked and lots of connections. Right? People are mentioning places, connecting to people, families, and such. So that's exactly in line with the kind of ways that music can be used to support health and wellness. So a lot of what I'm going to tell you, I think a lot of people, it's intuitive. We know that music makes a difference, but we might not know why or how. And I hope today to share with you a little bit of science, of brain information about why music is so powerful and impactful for us. And to get started, we'll talk about music and connection. And research shows that feeling accepted And a sense of belonging, well, we know that that's a human need. And we know from research that risk factors for depression and so is social withdrawal. So if people are feeling socially withdrawn, then they may be predisposed or develop depression. And an individual's level of social identification or connection is correlated to depression severity. So connection is something that's really important for us to foster in ourselves and in those that we love and care for. And I hope to share two different ways of how music can help us foster connection. The first way is an intergenerational way, actually, and this is near and dear to my heart. Here in Hamilton, I run an intergenerational music program called Fountains of Youth. And in this program, we use music and specifically the ukulele, which is why it's called Fountains of Youth, to connect different age groups. So we bring children from elementary and high schools into long-term care homes and retirement homes. And our university students help facilitate these interactions. And you can see in this picture on the screen that these young children and this resident of this retirement home, they're working on a music bingo card together. And the kids will play songs from that music bingo sheet for the residents. And then the residents will sing songs from that bingo sheet as well. So sharing each other's music is a really powerful way to connect the generations. And I'm going to show you a quick video of the program now. I will show you the pre-COVID video, and if we have time at the end, I'll show you what we've been doing during COVID. And thanks for your patience. We've got lots of back and forth happening today as I'm toggling between different windows. So hopefully you can all now see this video. Here we go.
Music, as we've learned in the course, it has the potential to evoke lots of meaningful memories. We learn about the psychological benefits and just the overall health benefits that it has. It's also a community placement course, so not only do we learn about the scientific components and the benefits behind music, how that works in the brain, but we also put this into practice and we go visit retirement homes and long-term care homes, and we play music, we do activities, and we're actually able to see these benefits in real life.
Just to see the young people. Oh, I love the kids. They're just great. When I was in public school, and that's many years ago, I didn't have the opportunity at that time to learn to play an instrument, you know, and it's been just great. I get down here every time they come in, so, and sing along.
It's just such a meaningful program to have, and I think it's so beneficial to be introducing these intergenerational relationships and just to place that importance at this time in society.
All right. So there's a snapshot of our intergenerational music program called Fountains of Youth that we run before, and we will restart it after the pandemic. Right now, actually, we're connecting older adults, so individuals over the age of 65 who are living at home in the community, with elementary children from Ontario as well as Halifax, Nova Scotia. So I'll have you, my contact information will be at the end of this presentation, and if you or anyone you know would like to get involved in this virtual version of our program, we'd love to hear from you. So we've talked about this intergenerational music program where we bring children and elders together. Now, that is an example of a non-familial intergenerational music program. I think there was one time that one of the children's grandfather lived in the home, but other than that, the kids are not related to the residents they're working with. So I'd like to also talk about how music can be purposefully used to connect families. And so we'll be giving you a number of strategies throughout our time together. And this is really the first one that I think is widely applicable to everyone who's listening in today. And I'll invite you to think about what a musical conversation could be. And we started to have a musical conversation in the chat while I was playing Four Strong Winds. I invited you to share your memories, your thoughts, your experiences with that musical offering that I was providing. So that's a great way to have a musical conversation with a loved one. As you do this, I'd invite you to focus on the two questions that are on the screen here. The first one reads, what is a song that has been meaningful to you in your life? And the second one reads, what is a song that expresses something about you? And the reason these two questions are so important is because it is really, really hard to answer a question such as, what is your favorite song? Many of us struggle to answer that question, yet we ask it of the people we care for and our loved ones all the time. So by asking different questions, not about what's the favorite or the best, but what has been meaningful, is a great way to spark conversation. The second idea that I'd invite you to take away from this slide is the importance of sharing your own powerful music family stories. So thinking about if you're wanting to start a conversation with your partner about music, it's equally important for you to ask your partner about the music that they enjoy, and you can use these prompt questions on the screen, but also to share your own musical stories. It really levels the playing field and makes it a conversation. And what's really interesting is that many of the important memories that you have about music in your family context, other members of your family might not find important. And a great example for this for me is my mom's music. When I was a kid, my mom would always play the Dixie Chicks in the car when we're driving places. And so now that music has a really special place in my heart. That makes me think of my mom. And so when I told her this, she was kind of surprised. So you don't realize these connections and meaningful conversations that you can have until you start voicing them and having them. So putting a little bit of thought into a musical conversation can go a long way. Next, we're going to talk about music and communication, and we'll specifically address how music helps us communicate feelings. As we enter this section, I want to make a really important definition for all of you on this call, and that is the definition of music therapy. Music therapy is defined over here on the left-hand side of the screen. It's where a registered clinical therapist uses music as their primary care tool in the context of a therapeutic relationship in order to work towards client-centered health and wellness goals. So music therapy is a scope of practice, and music therapists work in all different types of settings, such as hospices, childcare centers, psychotherapy clinics, long-term care, and in the community. Music therapists work everywhere, and they are clinicians who have specialized training and can use music in a very powerful way. So many people think I am a music therapist. I'm actually not a music therapist. I do not use music in a therapeutic relationship with others. I study the effects of music on the brain and share information with others about music and its impact on our bodies and minds. So if you need to reach out to a music therapist, the links page that's associated with this talk has a link to the British Columbia Association of Music Therapists, and you can link there and check it out. So music and communicating feelings. The reason I wanted to introduce the definition of music therapy is because music therapists use music to communicate feelings in a really powerful way. Music can become a placeholder for emotions. And what this means is that sometimes when we're trying to process really challenging thoughts and feelings and expressions, it's challenging for us to confront those feelings in the forefront of our brain. So by listening to music that expresses similar feelings, or by creating music that expresses similar feelings, we can help to work through those feelings and emotions. And a great way to do this is through songwriting. And so that is an example of how music therapists would help us with using music to communicate feelings. And I'd like to share a non-music therapy example, and that is dementia choirs. Dementia choirs have popped up all over Canada and the US and the UK and other parts of the world. And singing really has become a staple in dementia care. And research on these programs has shown that singing in a dementia choir can improve quality of life, lower depression and anxiety scores. It can improve cognition temporarily, lower heart rate, improve lung capacity, and improve appetite. So these are all fantastic outcomes that can come from singing in a choir. And many choirs offer intergenerational options, or options where families can go and sing together. So I'd invite you to check out dementia choirs in your area. On the links page, again, I've linked a dementia choir in Victoria, British Columbia. However, if you Google them, you can find them all over Canada. So we're now going to talk about 4 different areas of the brain that I call the musical areas of the brain. By no means are these exhaustive. There are other brain areas and parts that are impacted by music and activated by music, but we're going to focus on these 4 together today. The first one being frontal brain regions. So on the left-hand side of the screen, you can see an image of the brain. It's facing, on my screen, it's facing the right. So if I'm sitting like this, you can see there, the yellow is the front of the brain. And that's the lobe that I'm speaking of in particular right now. So the frontal lobe, or the front part of our brain, just behind our forehead, it's really the smart part of our brain. It does all of the thinking, or in other words, the executive functions. Executive functions are things like navigating in space, making decisions based on different information, math problems, those types of things. And our frontal lobe is also responsible for attention. And this is where I want to pause for a moment. Music has a very high capacity to capture and sustain attention. And we think that this is because of all of the different diverse brain areas that are activated by music. And I'd like to share a community example of this. When I was doing my master's in music and neuroscience, I had the pleasure of working in an adult day program, running a neurologic music therapy music group. And there was an individual at this adult day program who would pace all day long at the day program, pace so much that he would walk through his shoes. He was losing weight and was unable to focus or attend on something for a long period of time. The only thing that he would sit through was our music group. So this was showing us that music was captivating his attention. And we took advantage of that and helped him eat his meals during our music sessions to ensure that he'd get all the sustenance that he needed. And we left the staff with some tools and some recorded music that they could use to help this individual focus and relax and stay attended on that musical stimuli instead of wandering and searching all day. The next area of the musical brain is the motor system. And I know everyone on this call has experienced how music can activate our motor system. Have you ever been driving or at a concert or listening to music and you just feel your toes tapping or your body groove into the music? That is because there are inherent links between our auditory system, which is where our ears hear the music, and our motor system. There are neurons, which are the cells in our brain that are activated when we listen to music in the auditory system, and they directly connect to the motor system and activate our motor system. This is why we love to dance to music. We're actually biologically predisposed to move to music and to dance to music. And a great example of this in practice is dancing to the dining room, or really dancing anywhere in the day and in life. For folks who are struggling or have challenges with motor movements, turning on some music that has a really strong groove or exciting beat can really help those folks practice those movements. So think about doing your exercises or go on your walk and enjoy a nice playlist with some really groovy music. The next part of the musical brain is the language center of our brain. And just like I said, we're biologically predisposed to move to music. We're also biologically predisposed to understand music as a language. I want you to think about that for a minute. Think of music as a language. What does that really mean? Something really cool that I like to do is a bit of a demonstration to show you how much musical language knowledge you have.
So if I were to play this, that sounds pretty right. But if I play something wrong, you all know it's wrong. Your body and your brain knows that I made a mistake, just like when you're listening or in conversation. You know when someone has said something wrong, or if you're reading a book and or an email, if there's a grammatical mistake, your brain picks it out. Same thing happens with music.
And we know that we're biologically predisposed to understand music as a language because music and or rhythm exist in every single culture that we've ever discovered on Earth, which is pretty cool. And there's some scientists actually in the States who are working on a hypothesis where they're suggesting that music is actually the first language that every one of us learns. We learn music first before we learn to speak our native tongue. And that hypothesis is supported by things like infant-directed speech. You know, when you're holding a baby and your voice just goes up an octave or two, that's actually a biological thing that we all do. We can't help it. So that's very interesting. So let's talk a little bit about these language centers. There's two really important language centers in the brain that allow us to speak. And they are Broca's area, which is this little orange bit right here where my mouse is, and Wernicke's area, which is purple. And they're connected in the middle by something called the arcuate fasciculus. So we have activation of language areas in 3 different lobes of the brain when we're listening to and singing along to music. So this is very powerful, and we can use this fact by engaging with the music we love and singing along because it's good for our brains. It activates all of those language areas. And a great example of this is after individuals have had a stroke, often they have trouble speaking. It's actually one of the most common impacts of having a stroke is speech and language challenges. And what's fantastic is that singing can be a great tool that can be used to help regain those speech functions. Often, individuals who can't say sentences can sing entire songs from their childhood and youth. We also see this in the context of advanced dementia, where an individual may be characterized as nonverbal in their care setting, but they can sing all the words to their favorite songs. So a great way to keep our brains activated is to sing along to the music we love. All right. And last but not least, we're going to talk about music and memory centers. So there is a system in our brain called the limbic system. and it is deep, deep in the center of your brain. I can't really point at it because it's in there in the middle. This picture on the left kind of does it justice. You can see how all of the lighter colored pieces, that's your limbic system, and it's right in the middle of your brain. And there are two parts in particular that are important in terms of musical processing. The first one is the amygdala. It's a cool word, amygdala. And the amygdala processes and produces and regulates our emotions. So, you know, when you have a bad dream and you wake up and your heart is racing, that's because your amygdala was activated by your dream while you were sleeping. And your hippocampus is responsible for memory and attention and also emotion. So those two areas in particular control our deepest, most emotionally charged memories. And what's super cool is that musical memories, music association memories, are stored in the limbic system. So at the beginning of this presentation, when I was singing Four Strong Winds, I bet some of you have really strong associations with that song. And by hearing that music, you were probably activating your amygdala and your hippocampus, which was bringing you back to a time and a place. What's really interesting is that two of our senses can store memories at this deep of a level in our brain. One is auditory sound, like music, and the other one is smell. So that's why when we hear music, it takes us back. It takes us right back to that time and that place. Or when we smell something really familiar. For me, it's when I go home to my parents' house. I'm taken right back to my childhood. So another really powerful tool, and often this is where those musical memories in advanced dementia are stored, that we can still access through familiar music. Okay, so now that we've talked about the four brain areas that are important, four of the important musical brain areas, we're going to talk about the 5 domains of health and how music can positively impact health and wellness goals across all 5 domains. So the 5 domains of health system is pretty well used in our healthcare health and wellness system. And it recognizes that health is more than just biology. It's also cognitive health and spiritual health and social and emotional health. And I want to, again, remind us of those music specialists, such as the music therapists. They are experts and they can help achieve outcomes in all 5 of these different areas. So don't hesitate to reach out to an expert if you need some extra support. However, at the same time, there's ways that you at home can use music with purpose, and you can realize these health and wellness goals at home for yourself and for others. So we're going to discuss 4 examples of how music can support health and wellness. And as we're going through, I'll invite you to think about when the examples involve an expert, such as a music therapist, or when they involve a caregiver or a care receiver. And I'll also invite you to think about which domain of health are we impacting. Oh, I'm sorry, one more thing I wanted to share. This logo down here is the Music Care Training logo. Music Care Training is a training program for community members, so not expert musicians, not music therapists, to learn more about music and health and how you can integrate music into care in your own care settings. So the link for that training, if you're interested in learning more, is also on the links page associated with this webinar. So we're just scratching the surface today, and I'll invite you to check out the links if you want to go a little deeper. All right, we've got 2 examples on this page of how music can positively impact health and wellness. The first is promoting reminiscence. And we started to talk about this a little bit when we were talking about those memory centers of the brain. So music, as I said, is a very powerful tool to evoke memory, especially in the context of neurodegenerative disorders such as dementia. So a few key points for you to think about. The importance of sharing your favorite songs and your meaningful songs with your loved ones. because this can be a powerful tool across your life. The power of listening together. I gave an example of my mom and the Dixie Chicks when I was a kid, and we were actually driving somewhere, I told her about this memory that I had, this really strong memory of the Dixie Chicks and driving as a kid. And she said, "Why don't we listen to the Dixie Chicks?" And so we listened together and made meaning together. We reminisced about all the places that we went, and all the adventures that Mom took my brothers and I on when I was a kid. All of us have these strong memories. We can all reminisce and find joy and meaning in doing so. You can reminisce about a decade, about a time point in history, in our social history. Maybe you want to reminisce about a certain place that you lived, or a specific memory, such as getting married, or raising children, or being a child yourself. So we know that music listening is associated with a decreased rate of cognitive decline. So music listening is really, really good for our brains. And I want to reference a really awesome resource called Playlist for Life. And this resource is out of the UK. And I'm just going to show you their website because they have an amazing tool that will help you to build a playlist if you're not sure where to start. So this is also on your links page, but I'll just show you what the website looks like now. So this is Playlist for Life, and it has a whole section about getting started and what you need to do to create your own personal playlist or to create a playlist for others. And they have a whole section of information about music and dementia. So that's a great resource that you can use to promote reminiscence for yourself and for those who you care for. Skipped ahead. There we go. So the second example of how you can use music to promote health and wellness is adding purpose to care tasks. And I love this example. I've told you about my work at McMaster University and in the Hamilton community, but I don't think I've told you about my work in long-term care and retirement homes. I've done a lot of research and education in long-term care and retirement homes. And I've worked with a lot of personal care workers or personal support workers, with nurses, with recreation staff members, and with family members. And we talk about how there are care tasks inherent in the day when you're caring for someone in a care home or at home in the community. And by adding music as a part of these care tasks, you can create purpose and meaning of those care tasks. So I've listed some examples on the screen here. Dancing down the hallway to lunchtime, listening to music together during bath time, singing together during dressing changes. And this is really important because by using music and connecting to music together, you get rid of this hierarchy that sometimes exists and manifests when we have a care provider and a care receiver. When you're both listening to and enjoying and sharing the music together, sometimes that hierarchy can dissipate and not be felt as strongly. And I'd like to give you a few examples from my experience and work. I worked with one woman at a long-term care home who had a lot of dressings on wounds on her body. And those dressings had to be changed almost every day. And it was a very painful experience for this resident to have these dressings changed. And of course, she did not enjoy this time during her day. And that meant that the care provider didn't enjoy it either, of course, because it's a challenging task that was not comfortable for the resident. So we found out that both this resident and the care provider loved classic rock music. And so we created for them a playlist of classic rock tunes. And that became their part of their dressing change routine. And so that just made the experience more human for both of those individuals. It made it, okay, here's a task, we're going to listen to our music, and then when the playlist is done, our dressing changes will be done. And it allowed them to sing along together and make the best of this situation. So I'll invite you to think of ways that you could integrate music into care tasks, such as bath time, such as getting dressed in the morning, and how it could create meaning in your relationships. The next example of music improving health and wellness is how music can create structure. And this is really cool, and I've seen it used a lot in dementia care, where you create a cue song or musical cues that indicate structure. And to give you another example, in society, think of kids on a playground. When they hear the bell, that's their signal that recess is over. Let's go inside for our afternoon or the rest of our morning. So you can think about the same types of things, or church bells ringing often indicate, in my neighborhood, they indicate noon and 6 p.m. So you can create structure in your day or in your routines with music. For example, before lunch, maybe you listen to 2 or 3 songs by Debussy, who's a composer, and maybe you love Debussy, and that signals that, okay, it's now lunchtime, and it becomes part of your routine. Another great thing to do is to change the words of a song, and you can sing them. So this song was written by a number of care workers at a long-term care home, and they wanted to create a cue song indicating that it's time for lunch. So I will play this for you. So this song uses a familiar tune. We weren't changing the tune of the song. Instead, we changed the words.
Testing. Thanks for your thumbs up, everyone. Let's go, it's off to eat we go. Let's have some fun with everyone. Let's go. It's time to make your way to the dining room. Come with me and have a tea. Let's go.
So as you can see, you can create these fun tunes and songs. And I've seen folks use these made up tunes to remember morning routines, which sometimes can be challenging for folks living with dementia. So you have a song that talks about brush your teeth, we get dressed, we drink our water, we have our coffee, and then maybe we go out for the day. So you can use this music as a structure, and you can create cue songs with the help of experts such as music therapists, or you can learn how to do them yourselves in your community. And that's a skill that's taught in the music care training course that I was referencing earlier. Or you can just do it yourself. It's lots of fun. Okay, our next example is neurologic music therapy. And I think I referenced this briefly, but didn't really get into it a ton. Neurologic music therapy is the use of music for brain rehabilitation. So after an injury, such as a traumatic brain injury or a stroke, you can use music to help rehabilitate the cells in your brain. And this happens through a process called neuroplasticity. And that's a super cool word, and I invite you to take note of it. Neuroplasticity refers to our brain's ability to change in structure and function across our life. Our brain can be plastic and can change all the way through our entire life. It's never too late to use music to support your brain health. And neurologic music therapy is an evidence-based practice that uses music to support different types of brain health. So one way that we can support brain health is through practicing attention. And so we have some techniques here, music attention control training. There's 20 techniques total. And I think for the sake of time, we're going to skip this example and we can come back to it at the end if we have time. But I invite you to look up neurologic music therapy. Again, that's also on the links page, the World organizing body is located here in Toronto, which is fantastic. So there are lots of neurologic music therapists all over Canada. Overall, I want you to leave today with the idea that it's all about presence and not about performance. Hopefully you can see how through the examples we worked through today, you don't need to be an expert musician or a clinical therapist to think about ways that you can integrate music into your health and wellness journey or the journey that you share with others. Think about the purpose of the music you're using, how you can leverage recorded music, and when you might want to use performance-based music. But think about music as a tool to foster connection and meaning and purpose, rather than thinking of music as a performance. So I want to reference one quick study about how music can be used by any of us to support brain health. So this study was conducted in 2010, and it looked at the benefits of engaging with music for elderly individuals, so individuals over the age of 65. And this study showed that folks who had a 30-minute music lesson and did 3 hours of self-practice per week had increased working memory, perceptual speed, and motor skills. So this study showed us really what we all know is that music benefits our brain health. Engaging in music through listening or playing is really good for us. And I invite each of you to reflect on how you might integrate more music into your daily lives and routines moving forward. So why music works? This is just a bit of a summary in terms of what we've discussed today. Musical pathways align with non-musical functional pathways in the brain. Music can be associated with memories at a deep level, and that's probably the most important takeaway for us, those of us who are looking at music in the context of dementia care. Music activates many parts of the brain, and music and its component parts can induce neuroplasticity. We can change our brain by engaging with music. And finally, music is something that we can all connect to independent of age, life stage, and other personal factors. So as we conclude our time together today, I'd like to address the difference between risk reduction and prevention. And this is a really important message. And for those of you who were attending the webinar on May 12th about an introduction to brain health, you'll see that this is a bit of a message that built upon what that webinar discussed. It might be review, but it's an important message. So I'm just going to read from the slide. By integrating some of the known best practices into your life, such as cognitive stimulation through music, you may be able to reduce the risk of developing dementia. However, we cannot prevent dementia. We don't know all of the science behind the development of all the different types of dementia. Therefore, we can't say that doing this will prevent you from developing dementia. However, we know that we can reduce our risk of developing dementia by doing these best practices. And I've discussed the musical best practices today. And I hope that each of you take away from this webinar that it's never too late to invest in your brain health and wellness. Reflect on maybe one key takeaway from today and how you might integrate it into your life or the life of an individual you care for. So in terms of resources, where to learn more, I Am Hope. This is my organization here in Hamilton. So if you are interested in connecting about our intergenerational music program, I'd invite you to check out our website and you can send me an email. Room 217, that is the organization that runs the music care training that's accessible for everyone. And that's on our links page. And I think Lori's posted it in the chat, which is great. And I'd just like to say a huge thanks to each of you for your attention, for being here, and for being a part of this special hour. And I'm happy to do some questions.
It was wonderful, Chelsea. I'm mostly people have been absorbing. I think I don't see a lot of questions, so we'll see We'll see what happens now. Lots of people are inspired. I know I was. I've been writing notes as you've been talking. That's been great. How does neuroplasticity improve through music?
Oh, yeah. I'm just looking at the chat. Sorry, folks, that I wasn't able to keep better tabs on the chat. Thanks, Lori, for doing a great job of that. How does neuroplasticity improve through music? So neuroplasticity refers to a process where our brains change in function or structure over time. And a great analogy for this is thinking about your neurons like analogous to your muscles. So we know that through exercise, we can strengthen and change our muscles in our body. So similarly, with practice, by working those neurons in our brain, we can change the structure and function in our brain. And through research, we've realized that music is one of the most powerful tools to promote neuroplasticity because it activates so many different brain areas. And because those brain areas that music activates have dual functions in other areas of our life. So I spoke about how music activates language areas. So what that means is by engaging with music, we're working those language areas in our brain, effectively making them stronger, making the connections between the neurons stronger. I will say that it takes a lot of focused work to induce neuroplasticity. It isn't something that can just happen overnight. And I invite you to connect with an expert, such as a music therapist or a neurologic music therapist, if you're interested in learning more, because they're the clinicians who help do this in an expert way in our communities.
People are wondering if you could cover the piece that you skipped over.
Oh, music attention control training. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so in terms of the music attention control training, I'm not going to go back to the slide because it just says music attention control training experiential. So we're going to do it. What this means is I'll invite anyone who would like to participate in this experiential to do so. You need to have free motion of your hands for this experiential. Feel free to turn off your camera if that makes you more comfortable. But play along. I will kind of keep moving the experiential along. So if you get lost or caught up, no problem. Take a breath and jump back in. All right? Okay, here we go. Need to change my input.
All right. So it's a listening exercise. So when I'm playing this sound, I need you to all clap your hands. So you're going to clap along when you hear this sound. Awesome. And if I stop, you stop clapping. All right, that is level 1. Thumbs up if we want to move to level 2. Okay, so level 2, does everyone have jazz hands? Awesome. When you hear this, you're going to do jazz hands. And if you hear this, what do you do? All right, shall we do level 3? Yes? Okay. When you hear this, you're gonna pat your knees. This is an example of a piece of music that has good groove. Remember how I said you could get your toes tapping? This is a great example of that. So let's pat your knees, and if you tap your toes along the way, that's okay too. Pat those knees. Give yourselves a round of applause.
Oh, that was wonderful, Chelsea. I know that we're a couple of minutes over, but we've still got a lot of people on, so I'm just gonna see if there's any more questions. Um, somebody had a question about dementia choirs. I don't know that I saw that one.
Yeah, Clark, feel free to type your question if you have. And I see another one from Carrie. Practically speaking, re-neuroplasticity. So if we try to learn a new song or dance with grandkids, these help build neuroplasticity. Great question, Carrie. So in terms of childhood development, music is really great for kids' brains. It helps develop not only musical function, but other functions, just like we talked about how music activates areas of the brain that have another job, such as the front brain, which does a lot of our critical thinking. So by using music, we can work that area of the brain. So yeah, it does support brain development for kids, which I guess technically by the definition is neuroplasticity. Usually we think of neuroplasticity in terms of brain changes across the life course, not necessarily in typical development of kids, but I think you're bang on there. Okay, Clark's typed up his question. My wife used to love singing, but I can't get her to participate in a dementia choir. Any ideas? Great question, Clark. I would say, number one, perhaps invite her to sing with you at home. Turn on some music that you know and love or that has been important in your relationship and listen together or sing along together or dance together. Create these powerful music moments in the comfort of your own home. And perhaps that might be a stepping stone, or perhaps that's what your musical experience is. Maybe a dementia choir isn't quite right for her, but you can create those meaningful outcomes that a dementia choir would create in your house. Hopefully that helps. Feel free to type if you have more thoughts or comments.
Well, I don't see any more questions coming in. Oh, there's a choir in Burnaby called the New Dimensions. Dimensions, I love that.
I love it too.
Yeah. And I thank all of you so much for participating today. Chelsea, it's been an absolute joy. Yep, totally. I see people clapping, and that's just how I feel. I can't wait to get this up on our website. Thank you very, very much. Thank you, everybody, and we will see you hopefully next week. Next Wednesday, we're back at 2 o'clock.
Thank you so much, Lori. Thanks everyone for being here. It's a gift to spend an hour with you.
Bye.